My guest in the Nimataion today is Stephanie Quick, and together we are spinning a yarn. Stephanie, you're an esoteric memoirist. You're telling tales of your experiences in the occult, and today you're here. Great to have you. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I was real excited to hear about this project and talk about my particular story.
I'm very interested in it. What has been your favorite childhood story?
Well, it is a comic strip called Odd Bodkins. It was written by Dan O'Neill. It ran from the about early 60s. He started when he was 21 in the San Francisco Chronicle. And then it ended up being cut in 1970. So this was when I was a little girl, like at elementary school. Like I remember being like 8 or 9, reading this in the morning paper at the breakfast table with the family. And my father and I were especially really super into this comic strip. And let's see. So this is one of the books that came out. You can kind of see it has this great. It reminds me of the alchemical illustration where the guy is looking at the universe and he's kind of crawling through to the other side of the universe. Very much that kind of a medieval, creaky, he always has the sun and the moon in the background, these incredible landscapes, and everything is very hand-drawn and that kind of 60s crunchy feel to it. He did, most of it was just kind of black and white pen and ink illustrations. But he had a great, in the beginning, he started out talking to kind of like slice of life things with these characters, Hugh and Fred. I think I have the beginning one here in this book, which is, you can just see landscape there. I don't know, the lighting is that great, but there's like the sun and the moon. They're just in the kind of abstracted landscape, and the little guy is sweeping something, and then it's kind of getting messy again, and he's trying, and then he just says it's hard to sweep ants. So, it started off with that kind of gentle, kind of wry looking at, things, although this is from the later, more mature part of the comic. But then it devolved, and this is, at a time of great political ferment, especially right in San Francisco. This is when most of these comics were written. They became very political, very psychedelic. He has, here's a comic strip of a guy in the forest, Hugh, and he's singing like a hippie. He's playing his guitar and singing about Smokey the Bear. As Smokey the Bear comes out, and I don't know if you can see, but Smokey is smoking wacky tobacco there. So this is very controversial in like 1969, right? It's right at the time of the Summer of Love. There is the occupation of Alcatraz happening. Mm-hmm. And this was American Indian people came and occupied Alcatraz, going back to the Treaty of Laramie, which said if you have these federal properties, they aren't being used, they revert back to tribal sovereignty. So that was very political, very intense situation. We were living in the East Bay, Castro Valley at the time, which is just like a 25-minute drive from Alcatraz in Berkeley. And we spent all our weekends in Berkeley with friends or on Telegraph Avenue. So it's very much part of this scene. Mom was going to all these anti-Vietnam War protests and taking my baby sister on her back and scramming before things got, violent and tear gassy and the cops trampling people with horses. So there was a lot of ferment, and Dan O'Neill became involved in that. He became involved with the American Indian movement, the writer, and he was also involved with the IRA, Irish Republican Army. He's of Irish descent, and there's a lot of Irish people in San Francisco. There was a lot of funding for those activities at that time coming from San Francisco. So all that ferment is reflected in this cartoon where he deals with authority, the individual against society, metaphysical questions as they determine how you see what's going on around you. Are you taking like, actually my nickname when I was a little girl was Fred. My mom and dad still call me Freddie. Because of the one character in here, Fred the bird, who has problems with violence and very like reactionary against authority, and he kind of becomes very kind of paranoid and tends towards conspiracies, and it gets him in a lot of trouble. Various things, you know, it doesn't always serve him well. But yeah, they end up getting in a lot of trouble. They end up having this situation where they discover that there is a conspiracy by Mars to mess up the environment here on Earth through cars, because basically people are too violent and we can't take care of our own problems. And so the Martians don't want us coming and messing up their environment. So they're kind of cutting us off at the pass.
It sounds a bit like Robert Crumb meets Philip K. Dick or something.
That is that I was thinking of it. I couldn't think of a tagline because I'm so, I mean, I could literally like recite whole comic strips, and everything from this, because it's been so much of my love since I was so small. I couldn't think of a tagline, but that's actually a good way of doing it, crossed with Alice in Wonderland and other types of pop culture references. Here you can see, I don't know how well you can see this, but the Jabberwocky from Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll, here is a recurring character. He also has, and this is interesting, recently I found out more about this. This is a pop culture icon. It's there was a hot dog stand chain here in the area, and it was called Doggy Diner, and they had these adorable, huge, like this is probably a couple stories high, sculptures, 3D sculptures of these like dachshund doggy chef things at their things, and they're just so funny. Now, I have not been able to find an actual connection, but Dan O'Neill was writing in a time and a place that was right before the whole Suicide Club and Cacophony Society started going on. And these were the people and the groups that started Burning Man, culture jamming, temporary autonomous zones, that whole aspect of culture. I have not been able to find a connection, a strict connection between Dan O'Neill and any of these people, although he's in the same place. He lives in Nevada City now, and that's where Larry Harvey lived, and it's kind of like Burning Man North. A lot of designers and people live there. I've been there a lot, I go there a lot with my husband and stuff. But the funny thing is Jude Law, who is very influential in these movements, is also obsessed with like Doggy Diner and the Doggy Diner heads.
I think I've seen this sculpture. I've never read the comics, but when you showed it, it was like not a deja vu, but something like, yeah, somehow I know it.
Yeah,
it somewhere, maybe in films, series, whatever. But
he's always kind of been there in the background, and a lot of people, he was like nationally syndicated during this time, so a lot of people would have seen it just like in the paper delivered to your doorstep. Yeah, but he ended up taking and this is part of his whole just like anti-authoritarian, which is very much me, anti-authoritarian viewpoint and just personality or nature. He wanted to have the copyright to his own comic strips, but the paper that had syndicated them, the San Francisco Chronicle, had the copyright. So he took a very bold move that, I mean, he could have made money with what he was doing, right? Like R. Crumb is now living in a castle in France, and he has a wife, and the wife have enough money so the wife has a boyfriend, this very opulent life. That, I think, with Dan O'Neill at that time, that was a possibility for him, but instead he just wanted the rights to his comics. So what he did was, the Chronicle was like, no, and he's just like a young guy with like no resources. So what he did was he started writing in very obvious riffs on Disney characters, so that Disney would want to sue the Chronicle, and the Chronicle's not going to want to fight Disney with all their money and lawyers. And so he was thinking, then they'll give the rights to me, and I don't have any money anyway. So
what could possibly go wrong?
So he pulled it off. So yeah, in 1972, the Chronicle's like, fine, you can have these rights. Well, here you can see. So Fred and Hugh died on Mars trying to bust this whole Martian conspiracy, and they end up in the underworld, and which is run by Pluto, of course, Pluto, the Disney character. And then they also have his major underling. I don't know if you can see him very well right here, but that's a Virgo rat, an obvious riff on Mickey Mouse. so, and it's really kind of
so
fun.
yeah, Pluto is the boss of Mickey.
Yes, let me see
Okay,
if I
so
believe I put him.
it's subversive on so many levels.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, here he is. Let's see, I think this one will show up a little better on screen. But yeah, I mean, it's a very bold strategy to take, and it's just like, okay, burn it all down. I don't care. Let's see here. This should be there. You see, Pluto is there, and on his nose, you can see that's Hugh and Fred, our main characters. He's preparing to eat them before Virgo Rat comes and saves them, because they need to be tortured because they voted. So he, but yeah. So
I mean,
yeah,
that's incredible to have the outright boldness to say, I'll take Disney characters of all and put them into my comics so that the newspaper won't be able to tackle Disney, and so they give the rights to me. I mean, that could only have happened in the 60s, right?
Yeah, I think, there are people that have, I think in certain, who's one of the guys, Aaron that founded Reddit, and then the Napster guy. I think there's certain tech guys that have tried to, just go have this big trickster bold move outside of corporate legality. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think you are right. I think it would be a lot more difficult to make that type of a move today. Yeah. But and even for back then, it was pretty bold. And I don't think he's like sitting on a big pot of money. I don't. He's a hard person to find a lot of information about. I kind of get the feeling that he's a little bit. Well, I mean, if you look at his comics, he's always trying to fight against these more irascible, intransigent parts of his nature, and just is kind of he says he's a reactionary person. And I feel the same way, just like, hierarchy and authority comes up, and I'm just automatically, wanting to flip the bird it's like,
yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, and so as you go through life, you have to try and figure out how.
Growing up in the Bay Area and reading these comics that has had this influence in enforcing your anti-authoritarian personality, one could say.
Yeah, and seeing that there is a freedom in it, but at the same time, you're gonna get, the world's gonna beat you up. People get beat up by the world anyway, but you could get beaten up even worse. But you may as well go down fighting. Yes, his characters do end up having various conversations with God, or the great hoo-ha, as they call the divine being at the beginning of it all. But yeah, so it's been very influential to me. And it's funny too, because the reason that I have this book, my father, this is another thing that endears this comic to me, because I read it along with my father, and I were like the big fans. And my father, when the internet started happening, he went and spent months on eBay tracking down copies of the Odd Bodkins book comics so that everyone in the family could have their own personal copy.
That's that's heartwarming and subversive as well.
Yeah. So it's a lot of fun, and I just love the sense of space, and the idea that the cosmos are just like ever present, and just to the point where you could touch them. Here you can see as they're going to Mars, and they're driving, through the Milky Way, past the constellations, these great drawings of these astronomical objects here. And then let me see, you have a bunny rabbit. Doesn't look anything like Bugs, does he? That's the giant space bunny, one of the deities of this universe that you have to try and escape from. So, but I love that. And then they're also just personally, the riding on the Norton brand motorcycle that Hugh calls Norton. Of course, it's a sentient motorcycle. And my mom's dad was a mechanic and a motorcycle racer. He did uphill motorcycle racing in the 1930s for Harley-Davidson and also for Indian motorcycles. And he was national champion for a few years. So that whole idea of just super yangy, crazy, very physically brave, possibly well, in my grandfather's case, definitely reckless, spending time in a body cast, masculinity, trying to make this way through the world. So I had this kind of family personal meaning, and he set a lot of the comic strips in the landscape of the Bay Area, including up in Petaluma, which is kind of fun because now the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which was founded by Edgar Mitchell, who was an astronaut. You can see the whole prominence of space and space exploration through unusual means.
Yeah.
They basically throw a magic cookie into the motorcycle's tank, and that's how they get to Mars. But that's in Petaluma now. So yeah, so it's kind of a fun way that, you know, it's woven in. I mean, to, you know, like my personal history, and then also the kind of larger cultural and alternative history of the Bay Area. So
that's so great. I've got goosebumps. It's sort of a animistic thinking in there as well.
oh yes.
And if you think about Dean Radin now leading the institute and writing about magic and so on, it's like a whole tapestry of pop cultural references, magic, animism, art, psychedelics, and I love this mixture.
And it's wonderful too, because his characters are very human and very flawed and you know, not helping themselves a lot, but still they can participate in all of this. So I like that it has that kind of hopefulness to it too. It's not trying to create these you know, type of people that are unattainable. You feel like that's so far away from me. It's like, hey, this is person kind of like this cranky slob who's shooting himself in the foot all the time, but yet like me. So I think it opens a lot of possibilities.
Wonderful. Stephanie, it has been such a pleasure to have you on this show and to go on this incredible, wild, free journey.
Magic cookie fueled motorcycle ride.
Yes, the next tagline.
Oh no. Well, thank you so much. I love the idea for this series, and I'm really excited to see what other people have to say. So yes. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, as always, your website is in the show notes, and I'm looking forward to see each other again.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.